All right, we're live. So we
All right.
we just spent what 5-10 minutes talking about Disney before we got into this meeting. So it's a perfect segue into M&A.
Yes.
I'm Michael. This is Jeff. Rob, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. We've been looking forward to this one. So who are you? Where can you be found?
Who am I? That's a good start. I was going to say, I'm excited to be here. And unfortunately, I had to cancel my appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience to come on this one. But you guys are worth it.
That's good for many different reasons.
We could just put some down the road.
We get more viewers. Is that what it is?
That was what it was. Yeah. You're slightly more controversial as well. No, but Rob Madore, where am I? I'm located actually in Charleston, South Carolina. My running joke is that I vacation here a couple times a week. And the rest of the time is spent in like Terminal E, Gate 12, where the Amex Lounge is in Atlanta. So live in Charleston. I've been here for, 10 years. Work for a group called MarshBerry, which is we like to say it's a boutique investment bank. But I've worked at other smaller organizations before of like 4 or 5, where we described it as boutique. And MarshBerry's got about 270 folks, with 6 offices in the U.S., a London headquarters and a headquarters in Amsterdam for our EU business. So maybe a slightly different boutique, but we like to think we're boutique in the way we serve clients. And so that's me, I guess. Got a couple kids that run around, keep me crazy, and increasingly add gray hair and expenses to my life. But love the heck out of them. So
hence the conversation around Disney before we got started.
Hence the Disney conversation. Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, tell us a little bit more about MarshBerry. I know, focus on the insurance and wealth management. Has it always been insurance and wealth management, or how did you guys?
Yeah, more or less. Like that's kind of been MarshBerry's roots. It's a 40-year-old organization, which is and this hurts me because I told you I live in Charleston, but I am originally a Pittsburgh guy. Go Steelers. Penn State though, not Pitt. And
Penguins too.
I like the Pens as well. We had some good years.
Yeah,
are you a Pens fan?
No, I'm a Kings fan. But
Kings, wow, you've been suffering for a while.
Yeah, since 14. But
so we should definitely get into that. But MarshBerry, its history. It's a 40-year-old firm, and it started actually in Cleveland, which is why I say I have to introduce that Pittsburgh is better than Cleveland, despite the fact that that's where we're still headquartered. So it started as a management consulting firm, which was that's our roots, and just kind of expanded from there. Because as you guys know or have seen, I'm sure, is like you end up working with firms and helping them grow and helping them be strategic in the way they think about their business. Add 15, 20 years to that, a lot of those businesses are looking to bring in capital or perpetuate their business or, do something along in more of the investment banking world. So they added an investment bank about 25 years ago, formally, with the broker dealer. And because it was like, well, we built great relationships with folks. They're asking us to help them and we don't necessarily have an avenue. So they're going down the road and talking to someone else. It was founded more in the insurance distribution space. So think P&C, EB, specialty, a bunch of other different areas, MGA, wholesale, and kind of, I would say, got into wealth management maybe 12 or so years ago. A lot of the businesses that are tied to P&C may have a large wealth management business, right? And then we started doing more standalone work, and then it turns out, and insurance, by the way, is a great bellwether. I'm sure we'll talk about what we're seeing and where it's going. Where's the puck going, to borrow the definitely not overused hockey term.
I was gonna say that's the best one out there.
That's probably the first. Yeah. That's my quote, right? That's my quote.
Yeah, it's not Wayne Gretzky.
But we got into it because we had clients that were doing it, and then you start doing kind of standalone. And you start seeing a lot of crossover, and so we just kind of took what we were doing on the insurance side and strategically started doing it more in wealth management and helping RIAs and and continue to expand that area of the business. It's the only area that I work in. We've got a pretty large team that works solely in the wealth management space, but certainly we've got, other areas. So we do, when it comes to what we end up doing, I mean, I'd like to think we're, kind of cradle to grave in many senses, where you're full service and you kind of help firms, whether they're looking to sell a business today or whether they're just looking to be independent forever and grow. As long as you're like intentionally growing, and it's not I would say it's not, and this has a negative connotation, and I don't always mean it that way, because I often wish that I had more lifestyle in my practice. Sometimes I'm like, hey, heck, it'd be great to be golfing 3 days a week. I'd really like to do that. But, lifestyle businesses are not who we work with, because they're not trying to grow. But if you're trying to intentionally grow, whether or not there's a transaction that's imminent or you're trying to do something like that, that's where we work with firms. So
yeah, which certainly jives with the DNA here. Obviously, a firm founded as a wealth management company, then the consulting and coaching organization dedicated all around sustainable growth, which led us to the partnership model and transactions. So a similar background.
Yeah,
so
growth definitely not an undercurrent in this industry right now.
No, I just hung up right before we got on this call, having a conversation around valuation metrics, and growth is and always will be the single biggest driver of valuation.
Well, and I think
I want to make sure, because I'm excited, Rob. We've never had somebody from an investment bank on the firm or on the show. So in our very second episode, we had a good friend of Jeff and I who sold the firm to Carson and worked with an investment bank. We mentioned Dan Sievert and Brett Mulder at Echelon, which this is a small world. We all kind of know each other. Sure. But there was a lot of ancillary conversation around what an investment banker is and does. And we have heard from a few of the listeners, let's have a banker on and let's learn a little bit more about what your role is and the role of the bank and how you help those clients approach the market, find the right potential buyers, transact, all of it. So I would love to just give you a moment to kind of go soup to nuts. What's a process look like, and what do you guys do?
Of course. Yeah. Of course we can go into that. And then it's nice too, because we oftentimes are sitting on opposite sides of the table. So you guys, you can talk as well. But I think the first thing, to add context to it is you've got a couple different levels when you think, what is an investment banker? Oftentimes people kind of bucket everything into one. And I'd say you've got kind of on one end, you've got more institutional advisors, investment banks, where it's a little more of, I'd call it's a little more end to end, right? It's more of a comprehensive offering. It's strategic work. It's complex M&A. It's recaps. It's restructuring, strategic advisory and access. And then on the other end, you've got, and there's a lot today and continues to grow because it's a great business to be in, more of like the transactional brokers, right? Where it's, their offering is primarily focused on selling a business,
right?
And just kind of connecting with different partners. So there's a little bit of a difference, and we'll certainly talk about the M&A side, but a real institutional investment bank is going to be able to provide you with services, kind of whether you're looking to grow or whether you're looking to sell or bring on debt, equity, et cetera. And that's where an investment banker comes in, or an investment bank, I should say, which is on the M&A side, on the transaction capital side. It could be, bringing in minority capital, right, and doing a capital raise. It could be supporting a debt raise, which is really big. I think you guys know, and you're helping firms both grow within the Carson network, but you're also acquiring. Everyone's an acquirer. If you talk to them, doesn't matter if you have 250 million in assets or 5 billion. Everyone's an acquirer until they start going down the road and realizing they're not really sure what exactly they're doing,
or how to pay for it.
Or how to pay for it, and how to compete in the market. So there's a lot of, training there. And so we'll do, a lot of that work, which ends up bringing in capital and so on and so forth. And then when we're representing a business that's selling, there's a number of components to that. And oftentimes when someone says, like, what does a banker do? And we could talk about brokers too, but when you look at like what an investment bank does, it's you bring a lot of the due diligence, right? What's a huge part of your process, right? When you get a firm towards the end of a deal, is you're going to go through your own due diligence and kind of revenue testing. And so for us, and a lot of the larger, more institutional advisors, they're going to bring a lot of that up front, right? There's nothing worse, like positioning from, what kills deals. It's time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like skeletons in the closet that don't come out up front. It's kind of one of those things where sometimes you'll talk to people and they're like, well, I'm just going to hide this.
Right.
And then we'll see if we can get a sucker in here, so to speak. And, I mean, you guys know it as well as I do. There is no hiding anything in this. All you're ending up doing is changing the deal structure, changing the proceeds, changing, whether or not someone's actually interested in you down the road. So we bring a lot of that up front. It's preparation. It's, strategically looking at the market. What's best for you? Is it minority capital? Is it, full sell side to a strategic? Are you looking for someone that's, going to integrate you out of the gate, or do you want a little more time? Right. So it's trying to understand the market, trying to understand the firm, and then doing kind of that full financial analysis up front before ever, actually going to the market. And then of course there's navigating the buyer universe, right? Which you guys do a great job. There's also, arguably 50 other firms out there that have some institutional capital. And what MarshBerry always says, and this is something that's maybe a little, I won't say it's like completely unique to us, because there are a lot of good firms that focus on this, but I think in the institutional side, probably one of the few. We don't like necessarily auction processes. So there's kind of two ways you can go. You can go with more like the smaller, tighter fit processes. You can go with the full financial auction. We believe fit drives value. So a lot of that middle part is understanding, like, of those 50, 55, backed acquirers, or even some that don't, because not everyone wants to go to an organization that has institutional capital.
There's an awful lot of first time or maybe one or two transaction firms that they're terrific firms. It's just a different model and a different fit.
Exactly. It's different. And it depends on what the owners of the business that's looking to potentially transact or merge are looking for. But so a lot of that is around finding, like, who are the firms that would actually fit. And that's not just financial, but it's primarily cultural, right? I like to say, and this is an exercise we do with clients, is like, let's look at this through the eyes of your clients, right? What are you going to be able to tell them? What are you going to be able to walk over with them and say, we're really excited about this because of this for you, right? It's not just about the you being the owner of a business. It's also about understanding where is there going to be a fit for your clients, where they're getting more service, better service, access to more people, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I think the best conversations we have, and the ones that we find most attractive, are when the advisors or potential sellers lead with that. How is this going to benefit my clients?
Yep.
And I mean, just in our eyes, like, hey, that's gold. We want to hear that. We want to make sure that we can provide that to you. So you have an easy story to sell when you are transitioning your business.
That is
well, it's alignment from day one. There's a strategic and a cultural alignment from the very first conversation when they're asking those types of questions. Exactly. And I will give credit, Rob. I think MarshBerry does a really nice job of narrowing that universe so that you are having the most impactful conversations from the get-go, rather than approaching it from a true auction standpoint, where it really is all about the numbers, and it's about that first LOI without ever getting to have a conversation with the prospective seller.
Yeah. And I know there are all sorts of different opinions on it, but we feel like we do our best to kind of strike a balance, between those things. So everyone's got a little bit of a different, angle to things, but, that's something we try and prioritize, is allowing, the acquirers to actually interact with the sellers to get to know them. And then up front, making sure we're filtering through that. So we will run, a process with our clients, talking with groups like yours, if you're kind of a part of it. And then ultimately, where we all get to make hay together is the negotiation, right? Where we're sitting across the table. And sometimes I'm sure you're like, come on, MarshBerry, like, you're going to ask for that, And on my side, I'd probably be saying, I I see what you did there. Like, I'm going to call you out on that point.
Right.
Try and push there. So, there's always the back and forth, but, given that we bring a lot of the financials up front, when you get into due diligence, which a lot of people like to think, once they sign the LOI, they can go celebrate. And diligence is, a long process. It's not easy. I mean, people that want to, you can't paper over or gloss over the fact that diligence is not necessarily all that fun.
I don't think you can prep somebody for just how intense it can actually be.
You
can tell them, but nobody understands it until they see a due diligence request list.
Exactly. And so, one of the things that we do, again, you're going to have different levels if it's institutional versus more of like a broker, but because we have like a Q of E and a practice that does the revenue testing.
And I'm sorry, Rob, just a lot of the viewers are relatively green to this space. So Q of E, if you wouldn't mind highlighting what a quality of earnings is.
No problem. I'll put it in the most simple terms, which is show me, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the time when you're meeting organizations, yes, there's financials that end up getting shared as a part of a process. And then everyone's going to kind of put their own pro forma together before an offer, or they should. But when you get to due diligence, it's the show me time. And I think the easiest way to wrap quality of earnings, revenue testing, is by saying it's where the rubber meets the road, and it's show me, right? Yeah. We'll pay you X dollars, upfront, contingent payments, earnouts, et cetera. But it's got to actually match what you're telling us. And we need to be able to actually attribute the revenue to clients. We need to be able to see growth. Like, this is where we make sure the story matches and the financials actually are telling the same picture that your package does. Yeah. It's like a CIM, so a confidential information memorandum.
Right.
So that's kind of like that's like the movie trailer to your business, if you will. And that comes at the beginning of a process. So once we get into diligence, that's where the rubber meets the road. And we sit with clients all the way through to make sure, we can kind of take a lot of that off their plate. But that's where a banker, a broker, they're going to kind of differ a little bit. And then post deal, obviously, that, we'll sit with our clients and help them on the earnout side too. So that's, I don't know. I mean, we could probably spend hours talking about all those different components, and everyone approaches it differently, but that's kind of our perspective.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, one thing I really appreciate that what MarshBerry does is you guys understand who the buyers are in the space. So you're able to kind of pinpoint who's going to fit most culturally aligned with your seller. Because I mean, there are firms out there that we've spoke to when a seller is having like 20 different conversations, and Michael and I kind of look at each other like, how are they going to remember who Carson is when they're talking to 20 other people, and how can they differentiate, what Carson does and what another firm doesn't? It makes it too difficult. So we really appreciate it when you have investment bankers like yourself basically speaking on behalf of Carson on navigating the process and kind of funneling him towards that direction.
Yeah. I am a huge proponent of, if you are going to approach the market or pursue a transaction, hire an intermediary. Whether that's an outstanding investment banking firm, whether that's an M&A advisor, an attorney, all three, have somebody that will represent you well and not waste your time. I will shout that from the rooftops. I am fine with the fact that you have just made yourself more expensive to the market because we're getting a better product in almost every regard. And I think that is really tough to tell somebody unless they've ever started a process or thought about it. But having something that we know has already done maybe the mental gymnastics around what a sale might look like and understands what the process is going to look like, that is such a smoother process for all involved, both seller and buyer, if somebody like you and your firm are involved.
I think I would agree. And you also kind of have to remember that the majority of firms that end up selling their business or merging in with someone else have never done it before and probably will never do it again.
Right.
I mean, especially if you guys have your way, because you don't want people walking out the door after selling.
That's exactly right.
But so you know, it's one of those things where like you don't know until you know.
Right.
And there's a fair amount of you know, an M&A process, especially on the sell side, is it's very much like this, right? It's linear in a sense. There's a process to it, but the emotions that go along with it are very up and down. And so there's and I think I'll probably have to make a, you know, almost like a compliance disclaimer here, which is I am not a psychiatrist. I am not licensed to practice psychiatry. So as I say there, you know, basically what I'm saying is like, you know, there's a healthy dose of, you know, your team that you're working with on that intermediary, whether it's like a MarshBerry or whether it's more of like a broker, should be sitting with you and helping you understand it's all going to be okay. Right. And kind of where you should be worried and where you shouldn't be worried. And that's a big part of it. And I will say that I don't know that I've ever worked with a client that didn't at the end of it say, my goodness, I am so glad I decided to do this with you or someone else, right? Like you. I don't want to just make it me, but I guess these are our clients. So it would be in that instance. But so it's one of those things you just don't know until you know. Though I will say the organizations like the firms and the owners that have had their own clients go through a transaction process, right? Which is there's
quite a few.
A lot of institutional capital, all sorts of different industries. So the ones that have actually gone through it, you know, alongside their clients, they get it a little bit more and they see what it does to them. So they're a little more apt to go and work with outside. And I think, you know, I heard someone, I can't remember who it was, and they said, you know, they kind of likened it to, you've got to look at your clients, right? They've got a fair amount of assets. A lot of them are pretty smart. You could argue that they could probably manage their money on their own and they might be fairly effective, but is it smart to do that?
Right.
And I think it's, you know, you could probably, now I know I'm talking my own book a little bit, but I think it's very few people that are watching this are going to say, yeah, you're right. I should definitely tell all my clients to go out and just manage their own money. I don't add value, right?
I agree. It's a really good point too. I've never thought about it from that angle around advisors have many times had clients that have gone through a process themselves. And, you know, I'm just thinking about Paul West sits upstairs, one of our advisors who works quite a bit with business owners, looking at exit planning. And they often hire a banking firm to help guide them through that process. So sitting more from the financial advisor lens and seeing somebody go through that would naturally, I would agree with you, make them more apt to hire their own banker or representative when it comes time for them to approach the market and pursue a sale. I think that's wise.
Yeah, well, I think it's smart. I think it's smart to work with someone else, and also allowing someone to help manage. Again, whether it's a MarshBerry or someone else, having someone else to act as the intermediary between the Michaels and the Jeffs and themselves when you're going through these moments where you're like, what the heck? Why'd you send me a 50 line item request list or whatever it may be at that point? Like things can get heated. You can get frustrated. Sometimes it's nice to have a layer in the middle there to prevent anything from blowing up, because you're going to end up having to work together the second you sign those papers.
Wow.
So that other thing I would say, just, you know, to kind of tie a bow on it, is when you think about all of what we're talking about, and obviously there's way more depth to go into there, that's what ends up feeding our consulting practice, you know, that sort of knowledge of what made someone have to sell, what made them more valuable when they did sell, what detracted from value, where were their issues in actually enacting a process. And that all flows through to our consulting practice, which is about, you know, helping firms just think well in advance of ever having to do a thing. And ironically, like the things that make you more valuable in a sale also are the things that allow you to stay independent longer. So, you know, so it all ties together. And I like to say that for those that are really not looking to sell and want to be, you know, perma independence, it's really good to look at what's happening in both M&A and with large large national firms like Carson, almost as like a model.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
let's talk about that, because we started down the road of organic growth at the beginning of the call, but let's spend a minute focusing on, in your opinion, what makes a firm more valuable to the general market and why?
Yeah, didn't you just gave away the answer?
Yeah, it's the answer. Growth is always the answer. Right?
I mean, first and foremost, you got to dress a good game like Michael here. Which, by the way, someone told me the other day, I was at a conference this week, and they and I was speaking, and I went to get into my bag and throw on my suit, when I got there, and I'm like, crap, I got the wrong shirt. It's like, this is too busy. And someone said to me, "Oh no, busy is in." And I got to tell you, Michael, you're making busy work there.
I don't know if you're calling me like Eastern European right now, but
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, with the name, you're more
if there's
Italian.
anyone that can pull it off, Michael, you got
I think it's a good look. I mean, I was told it worked, and so I'm going to go with it. And obviously, that's translated to me wearing a black suit with a white shirt.
Yeah, you went classic. Well, it's funny though. We start this call. The coat was in the closet. We have a prospective seller joining us tonight, and dinner plans. I hung this thing up. I get on the call. Both you guys are looking sharp. So I better step it up here.
All right. Well, no hats, but no. I think the answer that you already gave, like what makes a firm most valuable in a deal, is also the same thing that's going to allow a firm to continue to grow and be independent forever. I kind of liken it to sports, is like. Winning papers over everything, right? Like when you start losing as a team, and I got a little bit of an athletic background, but when you start losing as a team, like all these cracks emerge. When you're winning, everything's papering over. And I kind of liken that to growth in the advisory world, which is growth trumps all. If you can grow, and more importantly, if you can grow organically, right? Net of market, like, let's forget about the fact that the market's ripping up and to the right, and it has been more or less for the last 20 years, right? If you can control your growth, you have the ability to both stay independent, but then if you are looking for a merger or an acquisition, you are going to be the most attractive you can be. And that's got to be double digit growth, ideally, right? Double digit organic growth.
Yeah. So. And it is, I know, this is a recurring theme at every industry conference we go to, but there is a major problem with growth in this industry. Some of it's demographic. Most of the wealth is still held by boomers, which are advised by boomers. They're approaching the end of their career, which is why, in large part, M&A is ripping right now. But if there is not that track record of growth, and I would say sustainable, not a one-year blip in growth, but a sustainable growth pattern, culture of business development and client acquisition, that is the winning that you talk about with the sports analogy. That is the one thing we look for above all, other than maybe just the basic cultural components. Are they going to fit well with us too? But that's it.
Yeah, I would add, like, obviously growth's number one, cultural aspects got to be there too. But I think three, there's no secret to it. There's the aging demographic of the advisors. So I think in any M&A opportunity, we're also looking from a talent perspective. So what is their current staff set up? Do they have G2, G3 advisors to kind of help support that growth for when G1 does decide to exit? Because we want to invest in that growth of the firm, and we're investing in the growth of the advisor.
And that's actually, it's a great lesson, I think, for management teams to learn. And the way, so what we've seen, especially over the last 18 months, especially, has been when you're doing a deal, it is mandatory. It's coming from the Carson groups. It's coming from the other mature acquirers, where they're starting to mandate, like, we need to see the asset roll forward. Like, we need to see the net asset flows. So going back to that, show me in due diligence. Now it's coming earlier and earlier and being mandated.
It's first question we ask. Yep.
You're asking where is the growth coming from? Is this all market? Is this like one large client? Is it,
one large inorganic acquisition?
Like, what is it? And so the lesson for management teams that, I was in New York last week with a couple groups that we run like a kind of like a CEO peer group, similar to your coach. And we talked a lot about this, and the lesson to be learned, I think, is like, if you are looking to build, like Jeff said, the layers of production and have that culture of growth, you need to be able to track something, right? If you can track it, you can measure it, you can change it. It's so important to build that into the fabric of your team today, and be able to pull that out and see where it's coming from. Not just, is it coming from new clients, but also from who and how are we getting those things?
Yeah.
And then that all ends up flowing down into, it could be equity decisions. It could be how they're compensated. It could be like, where do we invest money so that
budget.
we can grow? Because everyone wants to grow. Right. It's just how. And when you look at, we have this slide, which I can send you guys too, if it's ever helpful. But where it's like, there's a spectrum of how firms grow, right? And on one end, it's like more traditional. It's a little faster to show revenue, but it's a lot. It's they're kind of like one hit wonders, right? Mm-hmm. It's this historical way of growing. It's the referral based business. It's new clients or new assets from current clients, and
advisory boards.
Yep. And then when you start going across that midline, you get to the unknowns, where it's, I'm going to put $1 into this machine, but I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. I just know that this is where it's going, is firms creating growth on their own, that they own, that they control, that they can deploy to their advisors. And that's it's non-traditional acquisition of clients, and then it's digital. And, if you're able to even just track where things are coming from, that's going to flow through into your strategy as to like, what do we want? And then what kind of advisors do we need to hire? Right.
Yeah.
Or grow. Like, do we need to hire rainmakers? Do we need to hire servicing advisors? If you've got this robust digital engine that's producing clients relatively consistently, maybe you hire just servicing advisors. Might actually be cheaper. But if you're looking for a more, traditional model, it's a totally different type of advisor, and it's going to be a totally different type of compensation.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. And I think that leads us to another excellent topic, which is the quality of that second generation advisor. Because that's another big thing for us. Is there bench strength, not just for when you retire, because there are great opportunities where the G1 advisors have 15 years left. But if you get hit by a bus, is there somebody that can step in and work with those clients and actually grow this location, not just hold it steady or service it? So when we talk about G2, for us at least, it's not the 24-year-old you just hired out of a CFP program. Those are fantastic, but those are realistically 15, 20 years from being true producing, headhunting, rainmaking advisors. So do you have the younger generation? Have they shown a track record of locating and sourcing new assets and servicing them? And what we love to see is, are they equitized? Have you given them some piece of equity in the larger organization so that they're incentivized to continue to grow?
And again, back to the point of what makes you more valuable in a deal also is what can allow you to continue to grow as an independent firm.
I love that. I know I've never heard it phrased like that, but I love that that comparison, because I think that's so apt.
I need a trademark.
You do.
So I
think Wayne Gretzky said that.
Yeah,
that was Rob Madore too, right?
I said the state where the puck's going, and Wayne Gretzky said something
that's
about
true,
it.
yeah, it's flop.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But to me, so the reason that allows you to be independent forever is you have to train. If you're looking, and again, why it makes you more valuable in a sale too is, in my experience, the vast majority of the Carson Group type organizations, the large acquirers, they're not just looking for you to fold in and just be kind of another cog in the larger machine. There's a component of leadership in your own office, even post transaction. So like, they need, organizations like yours. Again, I don't mean to speak for you. I'll let you.
No, I totally agree with you. Who's going to be additive?
Need leadership, even if there's a different name on the door, they need leadership, and that's trained. It's not necessarily innate. Again, you can see that in sports, military, etc. Like, it's a trained skill to be able to lead an organization. And the second is you have to actually train people to take on risk. The vast majority of like, what I think Jeff described, which is you've got a lot of tier one advisors, the originators, the founders that built it. You got a lot of kind of tier three. And I don't mean that from a quality perspective, but just like in the servicing,
generational,
that are more succession, or excuse me, not succession, more like servicing advisors, more of the farmers. But there's not a lot of people in this second bucket. And those are the only ones, if you're trying to internally perpetuate, those are the only ones that are going to produce enough capital through their day-to-day to actually buy you out.
Yeah.
Right?
And I also think it's important too, because like looking at it from a buyer's perspective, it's a known fact that you work with people your same age. So having different generational advisors allows you to bring down that average client age, which looks more attractive for the buyer.
De-risk the business.
100%. So yeah, at human capital, right? It's growth, it's human capital. I mean, it's a goodwill business. Like you can't run away from it. Financials are great. You got to scale matters, right? The larger you get, obviously, the more you increase that initial multiple, if you will, because scale does matter. But at the end of the day, it's still a human capital business. You could be, if you have no people in the largest business, which it's kind of a stupid example because I don't know how you get there, but just going through the thought experiment,
it works
to be valuable.
Right.
You're not going to be valuable. So,
well, it's what I love the most about this business. There is the adage about it's not personal, it's just business, does not apply at all. I mean, it is 100% personal. There's nothing stopping your client from leaving you tomorrow if you are failing to deliver the service that they require or expect.
Exactly.
And it's the same at an RIA or an independent broker dealer or whatever it might have. I mean, there's a sense of having to earn it each and every day, which I really appreciate. So I know we're going to start getting comments from our producer Chelsea about timing on this. We knew this would happen. We're going to fly through this. So we've got let's spend a few minutes because I did want to get to where do you see this going. So let's go back to your where's the puck headed. But what's your prognostication for the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Like if you look at and I say this often because I like the context in anytime you're talking about our industry or other industries even. When you look at the historically or industries consolidate in 4 phases, if you go by like the Harvard kind of thinking, and there's a couple good books. If anyone's interested, we can get them. If anyone wants to spend their weekends like reading about consolidating industries, feel free to do. I mean, I'm happy to
real page turner.
Yeah,
they do when they're sitting at the E-gate in Atlanta Airport.
Yeah, I don't think I'm passing the would like to have a drink with this guy test right now. But they consolidate in 4 stages, right? And so you can kind of tell where we are by looking at market share, right? It's kind of like phase 1 is kind of like a very there are a lot of small firms in an industry. They start to be acquired one at a time. Phase 2, phase 3 is the large firms start to acquire more and more, add scale. Really the end of phase 3 is like you have you start to have winners and losers.
Separation. Yep.
Yeah, there starts to be winners and losers, which in my opinion is around integration. Right. That's the big thing. Can you integrate? Can you manage top down? Are the systems good? Can you retain people that you purchased? And then phase 4 is where you have like late stage consolidation. You've got the top 3 to 5 firms own like 75% of the market.
Yeah.
Right. And you can look into the retirement industry and you can see like record keepers kind of have that late stage. And that's near enough to wealth management that probably folks are relatively aware. But this has happened in so many different industries. It's airlines, it's laundromats, it's
hotels,
hotels. Exactly.
Yep. So
that's the context I used to set it. When you look at where market share is, and actually we were up at an event for BNY Pershing.
Yeah, it was a great event,
Michael. Yeah. And one of the stats on the screen that was being walked through by I think someone from Cerulli, which really hit home, is when you think about those 4 phases and you think about market share. I think in 2023 the stat was something around the lines of like the top 5 groups own like 9% of the market in the RIA world. So if phase 4 consolidation is 75% among those top 5, we got a long way to go.
Long way.
We got a
Oh,
long way
it
to
was, I think it was Jimmy from McKinsey, right? That was,
correct. Oh, it was McKinsey.
yeah,
Right, that's
that
correct.
was
Oh,
fantastic.
my apologies, Jimmy. I called you.
I'll make sure that we tag him in this.
Sounds good. Yeah, please do. But those are, it's great stats. And I think it just illustrates like we're really far from being a fully consolidated industry. There's a long way to go. And maybe one of the things that accelerates that is what firms can create true brand awareness around their, what national firms can create true brand awareness at the local level. When someone says Carson Group, does someone in Des Moines say, oh yeah, Carson Group, and someone in Pittsburgh says, oh yeah, Carson Group, right? Like when you get to that point, it probably starts to accelerate even further because that's growth. And then, you can look also at the insurance world, which is probably 7 to 10 years ahead of where wealth management is, in similar trends where, eventually I think I just reposted an article on LinkedIn from our president talking about the insurance world and how large acquirers are being acquired by larger acquirers, right? You got firms like Aon acquiring NFP. So they have kind of that full stack of, the largest of groups they can serve all the way down to, small employers. So look, you can apply some of the thinking to the wealth management space and have an idea of where it's going. I don't know if that's where it'll end up going. I'm, past past results are not indicative of future performance. But I think you'd be kind of dull if you decided to ignore it altogether, because it's happened in industry after industry after industry. So,
well, I think MarshBerry's, your guys' story should resonate with anybody looking to sell, because you guys lived it through your expertise through supporting the insurance side of things, and now you're seeing it firsthand here in wealth management. So
yeah, you've seen it almost full cycle.
Yeah, exactly. You guys probably learned a thing or two supporting some of those insurance individuals selling their practice.
I'd probably agree with you there.
Yeah.
I would agree with you there.
I think I know I'm on record as saying too, I think we've got just a bull market, and largely due to demographics too. So I know your more structural thinking, I completely agree with, but just looking at the age of the average independent, successful financial advisor and their clients, and this great wealth transfer, that in and of itself, I think gives us at least 10 to 15 years of tailwind. With all the supply of new firms coming in that are replacing these successful firms that are exiting, there is so much runway to continue to buy.
So you could argue that they have to, new firms are going to have to pick up assets unless they're coming from they're like breakaways, starting their own RIA, which they kind of come with an
absolutely.
Asset. But your comment around, and obviously this is probably not news to a single person on this, around demographics. When you're looking ahead 10 to 15 years and you're saying we have all this runway, like right now there's a lot of frenzy in the M&A world because there's a lot of buyers and there's a lot of capital. And so if you're a seller, I don't want to call it a liquid market, but in the sense of, is it illiquid versus liquid? It's, there's typically a willing buyer or 10 for every willing seller.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But when you start aging that out and saying there's, you got another 10, 15 years of runway, and you're moving through these phases into phase from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, something that might end up accelerating that is you age, just age it like you would age a client book when you're evaluating an acquisition, right? And you say if the average owner of an RIA is 63, in 15 years, that person's not going to be with the business more than likely. And you're already kind of on the back end of the highest value for your firm. And as time goes on, you lose leverage, right? The less you've solved the G2 thing, the less you've created alignment with equity, the more you have to do a thing. And I think, I'm speaking your language here, but
we're sophisticated enough to understand that. Yeah.
When you have to do a thing, you have way less leverage. Therefore, you have way less value. And you probably have less suitors. So the market's pretty hot. The multiples are great. They have been for a little while. It looks like we're on pace to set, a record for transactions in over 100 million in 2024, even over 2022. So it's still a great market. But, when when you look at aging out that book of advisors across these firms that hold a lot of the assets, it's not going to be that way forever.
No.
And that's not meant to be a scare tactic. That's more of a start thinking intentionally about what you do to stave off having to do a thing and not having layers and not having alignment. Like those are things you be putting into your business yesterday.
Right. And whose equity do you want to hold? That's a theme we've been hearing quite a bit of lately is I know I can continue to grow this, but am I going to outgrow a Carson Group or one of the national acquirers who have shown a track record of 30, 40, 50%, and they want access to that equity? And the best way, or many times the only path to that, is through some level of transaction.
I don't think I can have an official opinion on that because everyone's going to have their own, every one of our clients. But what I would say is, that what I've often heard described as is oftentimes you can move from, small cap risk, small cap growth to, large cap risk, but kind of retain a lot of the small cap growth. So it's it's an interesting scenario just with where our industry is and is going.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 48 minutes in. You want to talk college football. So who do you got?
I mean, who do I want to versus who do I think will win? Like I'm a Penn State. I didn't go to Penn State. I went to Vermont because I played sports and they didn't have it at the time, but I'm a Penn Stater diehard because my dad's from State College. And I would love to see them at least get into the CFP. They expanded it pretty much so Penn State could get in.
Right.
They're always a fringe team, but we'll see. What about you guys?
I was about to ask me a week ago, I would have said Georgia, but not so much anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I grew up watching Notre Dame, but I think I married into a Husker family. So
I promise you it's not going to be the Huskers.
It's not going to be the Huskers. We're not making it. I'm just glad that they extended the playoffs to 12 teams. It's just going to make it more interesting now.
Me too. And I'm not going to go out and you said Georgia, and I'm not going to go out and criticize anyone on their team because this is going out into the ether. And I'm pretty sure anyone I criticize that plays on the Georgia team is like driving a Lamborghini and making probably a couple $1 million more than I make every year. So
that's right.
I'm just going to keep my opinions on
that's right
for myself. So we guys, we really missed the boat on athletics and college sports. Like, let's go back 20 years and
I know, right?
Up. That would have been a heck of a college experience.
Yeah. All right, Rob, thank you so much. This has been great. I know we're going to want to have you back. We really appreciate your time and support and all that you do for your clients. It makes a better experience for everybody involved. So thank you for that.
It's great. Great seeing you both. Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.